Hey guys, in this video we are going to talk about auto layouts in Figma. Now before we start designing with auto layout, we need to understand what a layout is so that we can understand the auto layout concept better. So a layout is anything you create with the frame tool. So if I come here and I select this frame tool and I create this is a layout. Also, if I come here and I select the frame tool and I pick any frame template from the right side here, this is also a layout. Now, an auto layout is an automatic layout. To understand this better, just understand an auto layout to be a layout that is aware of the properties of its content. Now, let me explain this further. Let's have this layout here, which is not an auto layout. And let's have another layout here. Now let's make this frame 2 here an auto layout. And to make it an auto layout is simple. Just keep it selected. Come here on the right side, you'd see the auto layout property here. Click on this plus sign to make it an auto layout, or right click on the frame and select add auto layout here, or you can use the keyboard shortcut by keeping it selected, holding down your shift key and pressing the A key on your keyboard, and you can see that it says here auto layout added. Now, for you to know that this frame 2 is an auto layout, when you come here on the left side, you'd see that the icon before frame 2 is different from the icon before frame 1. And that is because this here, which is frame 2, is an auto layout, and this here, which is frame 1, is not an auto layout. So let's see how an auto layout is aware of the property of its content. I would come here, I would select this ellipse tool and I would create an ellipse shape inside this frame 2 auto layout, just like this. And you can see that if the ellipse becomes smaller, the layout itself becomes smaller. If the ellipse becomes bigger, the layout itself becomes bigger. Now, this does not mean that I can only have an ellipse shape inside this auto layout. So I would come here, I would reduce this ellipse shape to this point, and I would change the color to this. Then I would create a text here. I would say this is a text. Then keep that selected. Come here on the left side, click on this is a text here, hold it and drag it into the frame 2 auto layout, just like this. And you would see that this is a text is now inside our auto layout, and automatically the layout assigns a space for this text here, which is this is a text. I can have another circle out here, then grab it into the frame 2 auto layout, and you'd see that the auto layout is going to automatically assign space for that new circle. So that's why it's called an auto layout. And if I keep this selected and I delete it, you would see that the auto layout closes that space automatically. We don't have to manually close the space or create space for any item that's coming in to the auto layout. So I would select frame 1 here and I'll delete it so that we can have some space here. I would bring this here, and while this auto layout frame is selected, take note it is the auto layout frame that is selected, not the text inside the auto layout or the ellipse shape inside the auto layout. The frame itself is what is selected. Now, while this frame is selected, if you come here on the right side, you would see that we have some settings under this auto layout text here. Now, these settings are the auto layout properties for frame 2. So let's understand all of these properties here and the function of each of them. So the first property here is the direction property. This property controls the direction of the content in our auto layout. Currently, vertical direction is what is selected. That's why when I add any new item into this auto layout, it is positioned in a vertical direction, which is from the top to the bottom. So if I come here and I have another circle here, then come here on the left side, click on the circle and drag it into our auto layout frame, you would see that it automatically places that circle at the bottom of our auto layout. Also, you can notice that the 3 items that we have inside our auto layout is being placed vertically. So I'll delete this additional circle and I'll select the auto layout frame here. Now, that is what this vertical direction property here controls. If I come here, you'd see that we have another property here, which is the horizontal direction property. If I click on it to select it, you'd see that the items inside the auto layout are being placed horizontally. Now let's move over to the next property, which is the spacing between items property. Now this property controls the space between the items inside our auto layout. Currently it's set to 10 pixels. If I come inside here and I change that from 10 to, let's say, 64, you'd see that the space between our circle here and our text here has increased. If I come here and I change it to 4, you'd see that that space closes in. Now that's that for that property. The next property here is the padding around items property. This property controls the padding of our auto layout. Currently it's set to 10 pixels. If I click in there and I change this from 10 to, let's say, 72, you'd see that the padding of our auto layout increases. And just to mention, padding is the inner space between an object and its content. Currently, the object is this frame 2 auto layout. The content is this circle and this text. So padding is the inner space between this frame 2 and this content. And what is the padding value of this frame 2 auto layout? It is set to 72. I can come here and I can have this set to 4, and you can see that the padding space has been reduced. So that's what this property here controls. Now we have another property here called the alignment and padding property. When I click on it, you'd see that we have this drop down box here, and over here at the top here we have the top padding property, we have the right padding property here, we have the bottom padding property, and we have the left padding property. Now these boxes control the individual padding property of these positions, and I'm talking about the top position, the right position, the bottom position, and the left position. So if I come here inside this box of the left padding and I change that from 4 to, let's say, 46, you would see that we only have an increased padding effect on the left side of our auto layout. If I come here and I increase this to 24, you would see that we also have that effect here at the bottom section of our auto layout. Now we have this property here, which is blue. This property here is used to set the alignment of the content in our auto layout. Now, what's the content of our auto layout? The content of our auto layout is this circle and this text, and currently they are aligned to the top left corner of our auto layout, and that's by default. Now we can align them to the center of the auto layout, and the way to do that is to come here, bring your mouse and click at the center here, just like this. And when you do that, the content of your auto layout will be aligned to the center of the auto layout always. Now, to explain why you should take this serious, I would take this frame out and I would create a button component. I would come here. So I would have this button text here. Then I would create an auto layout on this button text. Yes, that's possible. You can create an auto layout on anything at all. All you have to do is keep that item selected, then hold down your shift key and press the A key on your keyboard, and an auto layout will be created on that item. As you can see here on the left side, we have frame 1 created. Now this frame 1 has this auto layout icon, which means that this is an auto layout. So if I expand frame 1, you'd see that we have the button text inside the auto layout. So I would come here, I would rename that frame 1 to button, then keep it selected, then come here and add a fill color to the auto layout. So here in the fill section, I would click on the plus sign here and a fill color has been added. So I would change this to this. Now let's bring this here and I would close this. Then I would select the text here, which is button, and I would change the text color to white. Then keep the auto layout selected, come up here and add a corner radius of 4, just like this. So I would go back and I would select this button auto layout, and I would want to increase the width of this auto layout. Now let's see what's going to happen to its content, which is the button text. I would come here, I would click here, hold and drag towards the right side, you would see that the button text is not responding to the fact that the width of its auto layout is expanding. Of course, there is nowhere you would see a button with the button text staying at the left position. Every button has their text staying at the center of the button. So I would Control Z to go back to how we were before. Keep this button auto layout selected. Then come here in the auto layout settings, click on alignment and padding. Then I would align the content of this button auto layout to the center, just like this. Now, if I come back here and I increase the width of this button, you'd see that the content, which is the button text, is always at the center of the button, no matter the size of the button. As simple as that. So the next concept that we are going to look at is an important concept that is connected with using auto layouts in creating components. And that concept is the constraint and resizing concept. So to understand that better, I would keep this here and I would come here, create a regular frame without an auto layout on it. Then I would have a shape inside this frame. Now, while this shape is selected, if you come here on the right side, you'd see that we have a constraint property. Now, the constraint property here is used to position items on layouts. Now, if you come here, you would see that we have this little icon that demonstrates from left to right. And we have another little icon here that demonstrates from top to bottom. This is to show that this property here controls the vertical position of your constraint property, and this here controls the horizontal position of your constraint property. Now let's see this in action. Let's say I come here and I select this frame and I increase the size horizontally to the right like this. You would see that this circle is just staying at the left and at the top of our layout. If I come here and I reduce this or increase this from the bottom here, you would see that this circle is just staying at the left position and the top position of our layout. But if I come here, let's reduce this. If I come here and I increase the width of this layout from the left side, you would see that that circle is always going to keep itself at the left position and the top position of this layout. Now, it is like that because the constraint property of this circle is set to the left horizontally and the top vertically. Now, we can change that. If I come here and I change the horizontal position to right and change the vertical position to center, you would see that if I select this frame now and I increase the width horizontally to the right, the circle will adjust towards the right position of the layout, just like this. So that's the concept of constraints on layouts. Now, what if we have an auto layout? What are we going to have? I'll take this out. I would create this layout here and I would make it an auto layout. Now, let's say we have this ellipse shape inside this auto layout and the ellipse shape is selected. If you come here, you would see that we don't have the constraint property. What we have here now is the resizing property with the horizontal setting and the vertical setting still. But if I click on this, you would see that we just have this option, which is fixed width and fixed container. If I click here also, you'd see that we have fixed height and fill container. Now, it is necessary for you to understand what a container is. A container is any layer that wraps another layer. So if I have, let's say, this rectangle here, and I have this small circle inside this rectangle like this, the container of this circle is this rectangle that wraps it. That's the container of that circle. Now, the next thing we are going to do is this. We are going to create a component using the auto layout concept and the resizing concept. Let's take this out. Now, let's go over to material.io. And in material.io, I would click on component. Then I would select the app bar component, which is this. Then come here and click on specs, so that we can see the specifications to design this. So what I'm going to do now is this. First of all, I would have these icons set. Now this icon is a 24 by 24 frame icon. So I would come here, I would use the material design icon plugin, and I would make sure that this is set to 24 by 24. Then come here, type in menu, then I would have this. I would have that selected, keep this here. Then I would go back, I would have this search icon and this other icon here. So I would use the material design icons plugin once more, and I would have the search icon here. And this is what we have. It's 24 by 24 still. Now the next thing I would have is this icon here. So I would go to material design icons and I would scroll down to find that. And this is it. So what I'm going to do is this. I would select these two icons here and I would create an auto layout on the two of them. Just like this. Now you can see that it says auto layout added. Now this auto layout is called frame 1. So I would rename these two right icons just so that I can identify it better. Right icons. And while the right icons auto layout is selected, I would come here and I would make sure that the padding around items is set to 0. Now for the alignment and padding, I would set the content to the center of the auto layout, just like that. Then for the spacing between the items, I would come here in material design. That spacing is defined. It is set to 24. So I would come here, I would change this from 18 to 24, just like this. Now, the next thing I would have is to select all of these icons and create another auto layout on top of them. So I would keep them selected and I would hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and press the A key on my keyboard to have that auto layout added. Now let's go back to material design to see what we have here. Now this is here and this is here. So I would come here while this is selected, I would add a fill color first and I would increase it like this to this point. Now you can see that this right icons auto layout is here, but I want it to be here. So what I'm going to do is this. I would keep the right icons auto layout selected, then come here, change this horizontal resizing property from hog content to fill container. Now I can come here in the alignment and padding property and I'll change the alignment position from center, which I set, to right, just like this. And we have that. So I would keep this frame 1 selected still and I would go back to material design to look at the padding values I should add to the frame 1 auto layout, which is our app bar currently. So I would come here and you can see that the left padding is set to 16, the right padding is set to 16, the bottom and the top padding is set to 16. So I would come here, I would keep this frame 1 selected, then come here in the padding around items property and I'll type in 16. Now when I type in 16, you'd see that we have this. Now this may look too big because I am currently zoomed in to 400%. Now I would come here and I would increase the width to this point. So what I'm going to do now is to change the color of our app bar. So I would keep the frame 1 selected, come here and I'll change the color to this or to this. Then I would close this and I'll change the color of these icons to white. Change this also to white. Then change this also to white so that we can have this. Now I would zoom out to 200 so that I can increase the width of this app bar to this point. And for this floating action button here, I won't have that in this video. If you want to see how to create the app bar component with a floating action button, check the link in the description to the other video where I created components. So that's that. So I would keep this selected, then come here and click on create component. And that's that. We have created our app bar component. Now this app bar component is a responsive app bar component. As you can see, when I increase the width, all of the icons stay where they are supposed to stay. I want these icons here to always stay on the right side, and I want this one here to always stay on the left side. Now you can see that everything is working fine. So that's that. We have used the auto layout concept and the resizing concept to create a responsive component. And that is where we are going to call it a day for this video.